we've had this discussion previously
As that?
about the issue of the conversation should be, how did we find ourselves in this place?
Yes.
So, coming back to Rufus and what you've been saying is, I totally agree with him that you look at some of these conversations and you remember the issue of oil and the possibility that Chirchir said we could go up to 300 shillings. It was all part of these big sort of charade that is supposed to sort of acclimatize as to what is going to happen, so that by the time we get to that point and you're saying, congratulations to government. Actually, I've seen a few people saying, actually,
it's supposed to go to 300.
Well. Yes,
it was supposed to be at 300. It's a 217,
yes.
guys.
People are celebrating, so they've held it at that 217. So it is very, very possible. But the truth of the matter is, as much as I agree with what Carissa is saying, the characterization of the president as being as bad as Mobutu Sese Seko, I think that is hyperbolic. That's an exaggeration. Yes, he could have his faults, but going as far as saying that the president is on the league of Mobutu Sese Seko and all those African.
John, how different is it?
Wait.
How different is it?
Because you see, these guys were actually stealing money and stashing it away in Switzerland.
But why is
there is no is there
what?
Evidence that Ruto has stuffed money in Switzerland?
But the controller budget is saying, I don't know where it is.
Exactly. That's why I'm coming to that point. So this is what is happening. Again, I know many people when they're tuning in, especially with Akio coming at me, they might think I'm Isaac Mwaura. I'm not government spokesman. What I'm saying is, yes, I'm a scientist. I follow the numbers. Yes, we're trying to have a factual conversation based on numbers.
But does 2 billion scare you? When we lose 2 billion as a
that's
government.
why we're coming to that. Let me explain this.
Yes.
And I've said this on this show before.
Yes.
That if you look at the debts that we have, and that is the context that we must be cognizant of as Kenyans, whether we like it or not, whether we go up or down, the truth of the matter is that is the albatross around our necks. Okay, this is what happened.
Yes.
By the time President Moi was retiring in 2002, he left a public debt of 600 billion shillings. Yes? And then Kibaki came in 2002.
Yes.
Kibaki bumped up that to 1.8. So basically Kibaki accumulated 1.2 plus the 600. And then Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and the Jubilee government, of course, including Ruto as his deputy, came in 2013 and bumped up that number from under 2 trillion shillings all the way to the current 10 trillion shillings. Yes? And you speak to anybody who understands finance and numbers, that is a scary number. Yes? And that is the reality that we are facing, that we have debts that have accumulated to 10 trillion shillings, and we need to pay it back. That is why taxes have to be, money has to be collected from everybody, from any nook and cranny, behind the sofas, everywhere. We have to look for money from everywhere to pay that debt. Now, the part I'm agreeing with Carissa is now we should be having a conversation about how we found ourselves here. Nyakango, the COB, raises a very, very important issue that has always been there. That when you look at some of these issues, so you go and negotiate a loan, say with the government of Italy, yes? You pay commitment fees, you pay other amounts of money, yes? But somehow down the line, whatever project that you are borrowing that money for has not been properly developed, yes? But you've already paid, remember these fees, you're paying them up front. Yes? And that is what exactly COB is talking about. That we have made these commitments, but unfortunately we've not got to where we've accessed those monies for whatever reason. Yes? Including low absorption rates. One of the big things that is happening in the county governments is absorption of development funds.
Yes.
So once we realize that and recognize that there is this money that we have to pay back, that is why I've always been of the opinion that we need to now have a conversation around ideas like odious debt. So some of this money, you remember the big conversation in 2015 with Eurobond 1, which is due next year, and there were conversations around where that money went, that it is even feasible or possible that that money never got to Kenya. And that is the conversation we should be having. I tell people, some of these infrastructure developments that we have, we need to have a conversation as to how we ended up with a kilometre of road costing 1 billion shillings. You look at the Nairobi Expressway, 4 billion shillings a kilometre. A kilometre from, you see the Haile Selassie roundabout to the other roundabout around the Grand Regency there. That's 4 billion. You move to Kempinski, another 4 billion. How? How did we end up there? That is the conversation we should be having.
Yes.
Now, with the money, because we cannot be let off not paying our debts. We know that it is the first charge on the consolidated fund services.
Yes.
It's a sovereign debt.
Yes.
You have to pay regardless of who is the president, regardless of who will be the president in the future. The first thing you have to do is to pay public debt, whether you like it or not. And now these conversations we are having are stemming from that. That the truth of the matter, money has to be found to pay for these things. We spent that money. Yes. Nobody questioned how we are doing Outer Ring Road at $1 billion a kilometer. You use that road, it's the most dangerous road in Africa today, actually in the world. Yes? Yeah. How did we end up paying $1 billion shillings? It traverses through the most populated, highly densely populated areas of Nairobi. And yet, it is not motorable. It is not user-friendly. Yes. People get killed on that road.
John, are you also
but we are paying $1 billion shillings per kilometer. That is the conversation we should be having. And then find the guy who signed off and hang that guy.
Well, like anybody a person will get you that's a sober conversation to have. Yep. But are you then, just take 45 seconds to respond to this.
Yep.
You did see how fired up the president and the government was when they came up with the finance bill, which is now an Act 2023. And the president going ahead and saying, well, I want to see which member of parliament is that who's going to come in and deny Kenyans a chance to step in and and get their money and get their right. Are you also then, shouldn't you be concerned that when a motion is tabled in parliament to audit our debt, know which project it is, who signed on it, how much it is, and that
I'm with it 100%.
That is not vehemently going and telling members of parliament, I want to see
I'm with that
who
100%.
That. But he hasn't done it.
100%. I actually agree. If the president can tell us as Kenyans that we're going to look for those guys who signed off some of these projects, and we're going to deal with them, I'm all behind.
But he hasn't done it, then, John. That's the question. He hasn't done it
because we're not having that conversation. We're having conversations about Karisa and 714 million. Shillings.
The majority side, Kimani Ichung'wah is the aide of the president. Is the aide of the president party. Is the leader of majority. Yes. You like to think. You like to think the president speaks to him.
Yep.
He refused. John, he refused.
Remember,
not
again,
once, twice.
We have to be very, very careful about how we have these conversations. Remember, there is the issue of the tough war. There is a tough war. Let me just say this before we take a break. There is a tough war between the Senate, and that has always been there, the Senate and the National Assembly.
But on this
so the Senate wants to do that function, and basically what Kimani is doing is defending his staff. He's saying this is under the ambit of the National Assembly.
That's it.
Yes, but it is a tough war. Let's not confuse tough wars with what the facts are.
Once we come back, Silas, then the question is going to be essentially for a man who's saying we're going to borrow less, we're going to spend less, we're going to account for our debt. No, Kenyan is going to lose their money. In fact, that was he said. You would like to think that when the leader of majority in the National House says no to the Senate auditing debt, he will defend that motion like he did to the Finance Act 2023. That is taxing Kenyans like it is now. Once we come back, also, top of the issues that we're going to talk about once we come back, you see Kabwira Mwangaza, she got exonerated. Guess what? There's a motion already. 2 days after, she's got to go back to the Senate again if the members of the County Assembly for Meru vote to impeach her again. What's going on? Once we come back right here on The Morning Drift.